Claire Bennett stood at the viewing window of the Valkyrie research vessel and watched the stars pass by. She had been on this ship for 6 months now. 6 months away from Earth, 6 months. Living among creatures that could kill her with one swipe of their claws. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Program had seemed like a good idea when she signed up. Travel the stars. Meet new species. Teach them about human culture. The recruitment video had made it look exciting and safe. The video had not mentioned that her first assignment would be on a ship full of 8-foot-tall predators with black fur and amber eyes that glowed in the dark. The Valkyrie were hunters. Their entire species had evolved on a jungle world where everything tried to eat everything else. They had claws that could cut through metal. They had fangs as long as her fingers. They could see in complete darkness and hear a heartbeat from across a room. On their homeworld, they were the apex predators. Nothing hunted them. They hunted everything, and Claire was supposed to teach their children. She turned away from the window and walked down the corridor toward the nursery. The ship was dark by human standards. The Valkyrie preferred low light because their eyes were sensitive. Claire had learned to move slowly and carefully. She had bumped into walls many times in her first week. The nursery door slid open and she stepped inside. 7 pairs of amber eyes turned to look at her. The cubs were smaller than the adults, only about 4 feet tall, but they were still bigger than Claire. Their fur was softer and lighter than their parents', a dark gray instead of pure black. Their claws were shorter but still sharp enough to cut skin. "Good morning," Claire said with a smile. "Are you ready to learn something new today?" The cubs did not answer right away. They never did. The Valkyrie were not a talkative species. They communicated more through body language and small sounds than through words. But Claire had learned to read them over the past months. The way their ears moved forward meant they were interested. The way their tails swayed slowly meant they were calm and curious. Ricketh was the first to speak. He was the oldest of the cubs at 6 years old. He was also the biggest and the most serious. He took his role as the eldest very seriously. "What will you teach us, human Claire?" he asked. His voice was deep for a child, like gravel rolling down a hill. "I brought something from Earth," Claire said. She sat down on the floor so she would be closer to their eye level. The cubs moved closer, forming a half circle around her. "Something that humans use every day." She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of colored paper. The cubs tilted their heads. Paper was not new to them. They had seen it before in the ship's library. Then Claire pulled out the scissors. The cubs went very still. Their ears flattened against their heads. Their eyes locked onto the metal object in her hand. Little Siva, the youngest at only 4 years old, took a step back. "What is that?" Ricketh asked. His voice was lower now, more careful. "These are called scissors," Claire said. She held them up so everyone could see. The blades caught the dim light and reflected it. "Humans use them to cut things." "Cut things?" Another cub named Torvak repeated the words like he did not understand them. "But you have no claws." Claire nodded. "That is right. Humans do not have claws. We do not have fangs either. We cannot see in the dark like you can. We are not as strong or as fast." The cubs looked at each other. Claire could see the confusion on their faces. If humans were so weak, how did they survive? How did they build ships and travel among the stars? "So we make tools," Claire continued. "We build things that do what our bodies cannot do. These scissors are like claws that I can pick up and put down whenever I want." She opened the scissors and placed a sheet of red paper between the blades. Then she closed them and the paper split into 2 clean pieces. The sound was small and soft, just a quiet snip. The cubs gasped. Their fur bristled and stood up along their spines. Siva's eyes went wide. "You cut it," she whispered. "You cut it without claws." Claire smiled and picked up another piece of paper. This time she cut more slowly so they could watch. The blades moved through the paper like it was nothing. She turned and cut again, then again, shaping the paper into a simple star. She held up the finished shape. "Would you like to try?" The cubs did not move. They stared at the star in her hand like it was magic, like she had done something impossible. Elder Kareth watched from the doorway. He was old for a Velthari, his black fur streaked with gray. He had been assigned to watch over the nursery and make sure the human did not harm the cubs. He had thought the job would be boring. Humans were weak. What danger could one pose to Velthari children? But now he felt uneasy. The cubs were looking at the human with something he did not like. It was too close to admiration, too close to respect. He turned and walked away. He would have to report this to the captain. Claire did not notice him leave. She was too busy watching Siva reach out with one small clawed hand to touch the paper star. "It is so smooth," the cub said. "The edges are so clean." "That is what scissors do," Claire said. "They make clean cuts. Would you like to learn how to use them?" All 7 cubs nodded at once. Their ears were forward again. Their tails swayed with excitement. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since she came aboard this ship, she did not feel afraid. She felt like a teacher. The next day, Claire came to the nursery with more supplies. She had spent the night making special scissors that would fit the cubs' clawed hands. The regular human scissors were too small, and the handles were wrong. Velthari hands had 4 fingers with thick pads and retractable claws. They could not fit their fingers through the small loops of normal scissors. So Claire had asked the ship's engineer for help. He was a large Velthari named Gorak who rarely spoke to her. But when she explained what she needed, he had looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once and walked away. 3 hours later, he had returned with 7 pairs of modified scissors. The handles were wider and open on one side so clawed fingers could grip them. The blades were the same, sharp and smooth. Claire carried them in a bag over her shoulder as she walked to the nursery. The corridors were busier than usual. Several adult Velthari stopped to look at her as she passed. Their amber eyes followed her with more attention than before. Word had spread about yesterday's lesson. She pretended not to notice and kept walking. When she reached the nursery, she found all 7 cubs already waiting. They were sitting in a circle on the floor, and they were doing something strange. Their hands were raised in front of their faces, and they were opening and closing their fingers in a slow, steady rhythm. Claire stopped in the doorway and watched. Snip, 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 snip. The cubs moved their fingers like blades cutting through invisible paper. Their eyes were focused and serious. Even little Siva, who usually bounced around with energy, sat perfectly still as she practiced the motion. "What are you doing?" Claire asked. The cubs stopped and looked up at her. Rikith stood and dipped his head in the Velthari greeting of respect. "We are practicing," he said. "You showed us the cutting motion yesterday. We want to learn it properly." "But there is nothing to cut," Claire said. She walked closer and knelt beside them. "That does not matter," said a cub named Venna. She was quiet and thoughtful, always watching more than speaking. "My father says a hunter must practice the motion 10,000 times before the real hunt. Only then will the body know what to do without thinking. So we practice the scissors," Siva added. Her small claws snipped at the air. "We will do it 10,000 times. Then we will be ready." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. These children, these small predators from a species built for killing, were sitting on the floor practicing how to use a human tool. They were not laughing at the idea. They were not dismissing it as beneath them. They were taking it seriously. She sat down in the circle with them and raised her own hands. She did not have claws, but she made the scissor motion with her fingers anyway. "Then let us practice together," she said, for the next hour. They sat in silence and cut the air. Snip, snip, snip. The cubs watched Claire's hands and copied her movements. They adjusted their grip when she adjusted hers. They followed her rhythm and matched her speed. Elder Kareth watched from his usual spot near the door. His eyes were narrow and his tail was still. He did not understand what he was seeing. Velthari cubs learned to hunt by watching their elders stalk prey. They learned to fight by wrestling with each other. They learned to climb by racing up the walls of the ship's training room. These were natural things. These were proper things, but sitting on the floor and moving their claws like some human tool, This was not natural. This was not proper, yet he could not deny what he saw. The cubs were focused in a way he had rarely seen. They were patient in a way that usually took years to develop. They were learning something, even if he could not name what it was. After an hour, Claire reached into her bag and pulled out the modified scissors. "I think you are ready," she said. "These were made just for you." The cubs leaned forward with wide eyes. Claire handed out the scissors one by one. Each cub took theirs carefully, turning it over in their hands and studying it. "The handles are different," Torvak said. "They fit my fingers." "That is right," Claire said. "Human tools are made for human hands, but we can change them to fit other hands too. That is another thing humans do. We adapt, we adjust, we make things work." She handed out colored paper next. Each cub got several sheets of different colors. "Now," Claire said, "try to cut a straight line. Just one cut. Take your time." Riketh went first. He placed the paper between the blades and pressed. The scissors moved slowly, his muscles not used to this kind of motion. But the blades cut through and the paper split in two. "I did it," he said. His voice was quiet, but Claire could hear the pride in it. One by one, the other cubs tried. Some cuts were crooked. Some were jagged. Siva accidentally tore her paper instead of cutting it. But no one gave up. They tried again and again, each cut a little better than the last. Claire moved around the circle, helping and encouraging. She showed them how to hold the paper steady with one hand while cutting with the other. She showed them how to turn the scissors to change direction. She showed them how to make curves and angles. By the end of the session, every cub had made at least one clean cut. The floor was covered with paper scraps of every color. "Can we keep the scissors?" Siva asked. Her amber eyes were bright with hope. Claire hesitated. The scissors were not dangerous by Velthari standards. These cubs could kill with their bare claws, but she was not sure how the adults would react. "Let me ask permission first," she said. "But you can keep the paper." The cubs gathered their paper scraps like they were treasures. They compared their cuts and showed each other their best work. Riketh had managed to cut a rough circle. Venna had cut a series of thin strips. Torvak had cut a zigzag line that went all the way across his paper. As Claire packed up her bag, Siva tugged on her sleeve. "Human Claire," the little cub said, "why do humans make tools?" Claire thought about the question. It was simple, but the answer was not. "Because we have to," she said finally. "Humans are not born strong. We are not born fast. We do not have claws or fangs or thick skin. The universe did not give us weapons to survive. So we learned to make our own." Siva tilted her head. "That sounds very hard." "It was," Claire said. "It still is. But it also makes us creative. When you are born with everything you need, you never have to think of new ways to solve problems. When you are born with nothing, you have to think all the time." The little cub looked down at the scissors still in her hand. Her claws retracted and extended as she thought. "I have claws," Siva said slowly. "But I could not cut the paper like your scissors do. My claws would tear it." "That is right," Claire said. "So your tool does something my claws cannot do." "Yes." Siva looked up at her with something new in her amber eyes. It was not just curiosity anymore. It was understanding. "Humans are not weak," the cub said. "Humans are different." Claire smiled and placed her hand on Siva's furry head. "Maybe we are both," she said. "Weak and different. But different can be strong in its own way." That night, Claire lay in her small cabin and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the cubs and their scissors. She thought about Elder Kareth watching from the doorway. She thought about the other adults who had watched her in the corridors. Something was changing on this ship. She could feel it. She just hoped it was changing for the better. 2 weeks passed. The cubs practiced with their scissors every day. They cut paper in the nursery during lessons with Claire. They cut paper in their family quarters at night. They cut paper during meals, during rest time, during every spare moment they could find. The adults began to talk. At first, it was just whispers in the corridors. The human is teaching the cubs to use tools. The cubs are obsessed with cutting paper. It is strange. It is unnatural. Why would young hunters waste their time with such things? But as the days went on, the whispers grew louder. Some adults were angry. They said the human was corrupting the cubs, teaching them to rely on tools instead of their natural gifts. A true Velthary needed nothing but claws and fangs. Tools were a weakness. Tools were what prey species used because they could not fight. Other adults were confused. They watched the cubs and saw something they did not expect. The children were not just playing. They were learning. Their focus was intense. Their patience was growing. Their small, clawed hands were developing control and precision that surprised even the hunting instructors. Elder Kareth brought the matter to the captain. Voreth was old and scarred. He had fought in 3 territorial wars and killed more enemies than he could count. His right eye was missing, taken by a rival's claw long ago. His left ear was torn and healed crooked. He was not a Velthary who wasted time on small matters, but this matter was not small. The cubs were the future of their people. What they learned now would shape who they became. "Show me," Voreth said. So Elder Kareth brought him to the nursery. Claire did not know they were coming. She was sitting on the floor with the cubs, helping them with a new project. They had moved beyond simple cuts. Now they were making shapes. Stars and circles and triangles. Some cubs were trying to cut out animal shapes. Venno was working on a flower with 6 petals. The door opened and Voreth stepped inside. The cubs froze. Even Claire felt a chill run down her back. She had seen the captain only once before, from a distance. Up close, he was terrifying. His remaining eye was cold and yellow, not the warm amber of the younger Velthary. His presence filled the room like a storm cloud. "Continue," Voreth said. His voice was like stone grinding against stone. The cubs looked at Claire. She nodded and tried to keep her hands from shaking. "We were just practicing shapes," she said. "Siva, why do you not show the captain what you have been working on?" Siva's ears went flat against her head. She was scared. All the cubs were scared. But she reached down and picked up her paper. She had been working on it for 3 days. It was a starship, cut from blue paper. The shape was rough but recognizable. She had even cut out small windows along the sides. She held it up for Voreth to see. The captain said nothing. He walked closer, his heavy feet making the floor shake slightly. He leaned down and looked at the paper starship. His scarred face showed no emotion. "You made this," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, Captain," Siva whispered. "With the cutting tool, yes, Captain." Voreth straightened and looked around the room. He saw the other cubs holding their projects. He saw the scattered paper and the small scissors with their modified handles. He saw Claire sitting on the floor among the children like she belonged there. "Human," he said. "Why do you teach them this?" Claire stood slowly. Her heart was beating fast, but she made herself meet his eye. "Because they asked to learn," she said. "And because it teaches them things they cannot learn from hunting." "What things?" Claire thought carefully before she answered. "Patience, precision, planning. When you hunt, you use speed and strength. The prey runs and you chase. It is fast and violent. But when you create something, you must go slow. You must think ahead. You must control every small movement of your hands." Voreth's eye narrowed. "You think hunting does not require control?" "I think it requires a different kind of control," Claire said. A Velthary hunter strikes in the moment. A Velthary craftsman, if such a thing existed, would think 10 steps ahead. "Both skills have value?" "I am just teaching the second kind." The room was silent. The cubs held their breath. Even Elder Kareth, standing by the door, did not move. Then Voreth did something unexpected. He reached out and took the paper starship from Siva's hand. He held it up to the light and turned it slowly, studying every cut and edge. "The wing is crooked," he said. Siva's ears drooped. "I know. I tried to fix it, but the paper tore. Next time, cut slower at the corners. The blade wants to move fast, but you must make it go slow." Everyone stared. Voreth, the fierce old captain, was giving advice on how to cut paper. He handed the starship back to Siva. "Continue your practice. You are not finished learning." Then he turned and walked to the door. He paused beside Claire. "Human," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I have led warriors into battle. I have seen them fight and die. The ones who survived were not always the strongest or the fastest. Sometimes they were the ones who could adapt, the ones who could learn new things when the old ways failed." He looked back at the cubs. "Perhaps you are teaching them something useful after all." Then he left. Elder Kareth followed, looking more confused than before. Claire let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Her knees felt weak. She sat back down on the floor. "Human Claire," Rika said. "Did the captain like Siva's starship?" "I think he did," Claire said. "I think he liked it very much." Siva was staring at her paper starship with wide eyes. The captain had held it. The captain had given her advice. The captain had told her to keep practicing. "I will make a better one," she said. Her voice was determined. "I will make the best starship ever. The wings will be perfect." The other cubs nodded. They looked at their own projects with new eyes. If the captain thought this was worth doing, then they would do it well. They would make him proud. Claire watched them return to their cutting with fresh energy. She smiled, but inside she was still shaking. She had passed some kind of test. She did not fully understand what had happened, but she knew it was important. The captain could have stopped her lessons. He could have taken away the scissors and sent her back to her cabin. But he had not. He had told them to continue. That meant something. On a ship full of predators, in a culture built on hunting and fighting, the captain had seen value in learning to cut paper. Maybe there was hope for the cultural exchange after all. Maybe there was hope for her. A month after the captain's visit, the cubs had transformed. Claire could barely believe the change. In the beginning, their cuts had been rough and uneven. Their hands had shaken. Their patience had lasted only minutes before they grew frustrated. Now they sat for hours without complaint. Their cuts were clean and precise. Their projects had grown from simple shapes to complex creations. Rikath had made a paper model of the ship's engine room, complete with tiny turbines and control panels. Torvak had cut out an entire hunting scene with predators chasing prey across a paper landscape. Venna had created a garden of flowers, each petal cut with perfect curves. Even little Siva had improved beyond what Claire thought possible. Her starships were now beautiful, with straight wings and detailed hulls, but the biggest change was not in their skills. It was in their minds. The cubs had started thinking differently. They planned their projects before they cut. They measured and marked their paper. They thought about what could go wrong and how to prevent it. When they made mistakes, they did not get angry. They studied the mistake, figured out what happened, and tried again. This was not how young Velthari usually learned. Velthari cubs learned by doing, by trying and failing until their bodies remembered the right movements. They did not sit and think. They did not plan ahead. That was not the way of the hunt, but Claire had taught them a different way. A human way. And it was working. Word continued to spread through the ship. Other adults came to watch the nursery lessons. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. A few were angry. But none could deny what they saw. One day the ship's chief hunter came to observe. His name was Kreth, and he was responsible for training all young Velthari in the arts of stalking and killing. He was massive even by Velthari standards, with muscles that rippled under his dark fur and claws that had been sharpened to deadly points. He stood in the corner of the nursery and watched without speaking. His amber eyes tracked every movement the cubs made. Claire felt nervous under his gaze. Kreth was not like the captain. The captain had been thoughtful and open to new ideas. Kreth looked like he wanted to tear the scissors out of the cub's hands and throw them into space. After an hour, he walked over to where Rikath was working on a new project. The cub was cutting out the shape of a hunting bird, a creature from the Velthari homeworld with wide wings and curved talons. "Stop," Kreth said. Rikath froze. He looked up at the chief hunter with fear in his eyes. Kreth pointed at the paper. "Your hand is shaking. Why?" "I am nervous," Rikath admitted. The wing curve is difficult. If I cut wrong, I will ruin the project. And you are afraid of ruining it. Yes, Kreth was quiet for a moment. Then he knelt down so he was at eye level with the cub. When you hunt, he said, you also face difficult moments. The prey might turn. The ground might shift. Your strike might miss. Do you shake then? Sometimes, Rikath said. When I am learning, and how do you stop shaking? Rikath thought about it. I practice. I do the same movements over and over until my body knows what to do. Then I do not shake anymore. Good, Kreth said. This is the same. Your hands shake because they do not know this movement yet. Practice more. Your body will learn? He stood up and looked at Claire. His face was still hard, but something in his eyes had changed. I thought this was foolishness, he said. Playing with paper while there is training to be done? But I see now that it is training. Different training for different skills? The mind is a muscle too, Claire said carefully. It needs exercise just like the body. Kreth nodded slowly. The cubs who train with you are better in my hunting lessons. Did you know that? Claire blinked in surprise. No, I did not. Their focus is sharper. Their patience is longer. When they stalk practice targets, they do not rush. They plan, they wait. They strike only when they are certain. He paused. I thought I was imagining it. But I have watched for weeks. The change is real. The scissors teach them to be patient, Claire said. They cannot cut fast or the paper tears. They must go slow and steady. That patience carries over to other things. Kreth looked at the cubs around the room. Each one was focused on their project, their small hands moving with careful control. I was wrong about you, human, he said. I thought you were here to waste the cubs' time. But you are teaching them something valuable. Something we do not teach. He turned and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back. My daughter is 5 years old, he said. She is not in this group. But I want her to learn from you too. Is that possible? Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. Of course. All cubs are welcome. Kreth nodded once and left. The cubs had heard everything. They looked at each other with pride in their eyes. The chief hunter himself had said their training was valuable. He wanted his own daughter to join them. Human Claire, Siva said, are we really better at hunting now? I do not know about hunting, Claire said honestly. But you are better at controlling your hands and your minds. Those skills help with everything, not just cutting paper. Like what? Torvik asked. Like anything that requires patience and precision, surgery, engineering, art, music, writing, building things, fixing things. Any task where you must be careful and focused. The cubs thought about this. They had never considered that skills could transfer from one activity to another. In Valkyrie culture, hunting skills were for hunting. Fighting skills were for fighting. Each thing was separate, but humans did not think that way. Humans saw connections everywhere. They took skills from one area and applied them to another. They combined ideas in new ways. I want to learn more human things, Rickett said. What else can you teach us? Claire smiled. She had not expected this question, but she was ready for it. Many things, she said. Drawing, folding paper into shapes, building structures, playing games that make you think. The list is very long. Can we learn all of it? Siva asked eagerly. We can try, Claire said. We have time. The voyage is long and there is much to explore. The cubs cheered. It was a strange sound, like small growls mixed with high yips. Valkyrie did not cheer the way humans did. But the feeling was the same. Joy and excitement and hope for the future. Claire looked at the mess of paper around her, at the scissors in the cubs' hands. At the projects they had created with patience and practice. She had come to this ship as a cultural exchange representative. She had expected to give a few lectures about human history and show some videos about Earth. She had not expected to change how young predators thought about learning, but here she was, and she was just getting started. The day came when Claire had to leave. The The cultural exchange program lasted 12 months. Her time on the Valkyrie ship was over. A shuttle would arrive to take her to a station where she would board a transport back to Earth. She had known this day would come since the beginning. But knowing did not make it easier. She stood in her small cabin and packed her few belongings. Pictures of her family. Books she had brought from home. A few small gifts the adult Valkyrie had given her over the months. Tokens of respect she had earned. A knock came at the door. "Enter," she said. The door slid open and Elder Kareth stepped inside. He looked different now than he had a year ago. His posture was less stiff. His amber eyes were warmer. "The captain wishes to see you in the nursery," he said. "The cubs have prepared something." Claire nodded and followed him through the corridors. The ship that had once seemed so dark and frightening now felt almost like home. She knew every turn. She recognized every scratch on the walls. She had walked these paths hundreds of times. The nursery door opened and Claire stepped inside. She stopped and stared. The room was full. Not just the 7 cubs from her original group, but many more. Over the past months, the scissor lessons had grown. Other cubs had joined. Even some adults had started learning, though they practiced in private where no one could see. Now at least 30 Valkyrie filled the nursery. Cubs and parents and even Elder Kareth, who moved to stand with them. In the center of the room stood Captain Vorath. He was holding something wrapped in cloth. "Human Claire," he said. "Come forward." Claire walked through the crowd. The cubs reached out to touch her as she passed. Small, clawed hands brushed her arms and shoulders. It was a Valkyrie gesture of affection, one that would have terrified her a year ago. Now it made her eyes sting with tears. She stopped in front of the captain. "1 year ago," Vorath said, "you came to this ship as part of a cultural exchange. I did not think you would last a month. Humans are small and soft and weak. What could you possibly teach the children of hunters?" He paused and looked around the room. "I was a fool." The Valkyrie murmured in surprise. Captains did not admit mistakes. It was not their way. "You taught our cubs patience," Vorath continued. "You taught them precision. You taught them to think before they act and to learn from their failures. These are not just skills for cutting paper. They are skills for life. Our children are better for knowing you." He held out the wrapped object. "The cubs made this for you. All of them, working together for many days. They wanted you to have something to remember them by." Claire took the package with trembling hands. She unwrapped the cloth and felt her breath catch in her throat. It was a paper sculpture. A human figure holding scissors standing in the center of a circle. Around the figure were 7 small Valkyrie cubs, their shapes cut from different colored papers. The detail was incredible. Every cut was precise. Every fold was perfect. The human figure even had tiny features, eyes and a smile, and hands with 5 fingers. "We all helped," Siva said. She pushed through the crowd to stand beside Claire. She was bigger now than when they first met, nearly as tall as Claire herself. "Ricketh cut the human shape. I did the scissors. Everyone made one of the cubs. We practiced for weeks," Ricketh added. He stood tall and proud, no longer a small cub, but a young Valkyrie on the edge of adulthood. "We wanted it to be perfect." Claire could not speak. Her throat was too tight. Tears ran down her face and she did not try to stop them. "You are crying," Venna said with concern. "Are you injured? Did we do something wrong?" Claire laughed through her tears. No, you did nothing wrong. Humans cry when they are happy too. When something touches their heart so deeply they cannot hold the feeling inside." She looked at the sculpture in her hands. A year of memories lived in those paper shapes. Every lesson, every laugh, every moment of frustration and triumph. "I will keep this forever," she said. "I will put it in my home on Earth where I can see it every day. And when I look at it, I will remember all of you." She knelt down and Siva rushed forward to embrace her. Then the other cubs piled on, surrounding her in a mass of fur and warmth and love. For a moment she could not breathe. Valkyrie hugs were strong, but she did not care. This was her family now. These fierce little predators who had learned to cut paper. These children who had changed her life as much as she had changed theirs. When the embrace finally ended, Claire stood and faced the captain. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me stay, for letting me teach, for giving me a chance." Vorith dipped his head. "Thank you for showing us that strength comes in many forms. The Velthari have always measured ourselves by our claws and fangs, but you have taught us that the mind is also a weapon that never dulls and never breaks." He looked at the cubs around her. "When these young ones grow up, they will remember your lessons. They will pass them on to their children, and those children will pass them to theirs. What you taught us will live for generations." Claire wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. The shuttle would be arriving soon. She did not have much time. "There is one more thing I want to say," she told the assembled Velthari. "Before I came here, I was afraid of you. You are big and strong, and you have claws that can cut through metal. I am small and soft, and I have nothing but my brain and my hands." She held up her scissors, the same pair she had brought on the first day. "But I learned something on this ship. Strength is not just about bodies. It is about will. It is about learning and growing and refusing to give up. You taught me that as much as I taught you, because even though you were born with everything you needed to survive, you still chose to learn something new. That takes courage. That takes wisdom." She looked at Siva, who was watching her with bright amber eyes. "Never stop learning," Claire said. "Never stop growing. The universe is full of mysteries and wonders. Some you can hunt. Some you can fight, but others you can only understand by sitting quietly and paying attention." She smiled. "And sometimes you can understand them by cutting paper." The Velthari escort took her to the docking bay where the shuttle waited. She walked through the airlock and turned to look back one last time. All 7 of her original cubs stood at the window. Their small clawed hands were raised, opening and closing in the familiar motion. Snip, snip, snip. Dot. They were still practicing. Dot. Claire laughed and waved goodbye. Then the shuttle doors closed and she was carried away into the stars. Dot. In her lap, she held the paper sculpture of a human surrounded by predator cubs. In her heart, she held something even more precious, the knowledge that she had made a difference, and somewhere on a Velthari ship flying through the darkness of space, a little cub named Siva sat by a window and cut shapes from paper. She was making a gift for her new baby brother. A paper human holding scissors. Dot. So that he would know the story too. Dot. So that he would never forget.